ranking every Call of Duty Zombies Easter egg from worst to best. The way I look at it, there's two main aspects to any good Easter egg: gameplay and story. This list is going to be 90% gameplay based though, just because it's what I personally care about more, but some story will be factored in. This list will be Treyarch only. Today's video is actually sponsored by a really cool web browser specifically designed for gamers called Opera GX. What sets Opera apart from every other web browser is that it has this unique feature called GX Control, which makes it perfect for PC gaming. So you know when you're playing games and you got like 20 tabs open in the background and you can feel your game starting to skip? Opera basically makes it so you can have as many tabs open as you want without hurting performance. It's perfect for listening to music or watching YouTube videos while playing games. It does this by giving you this little panel that lets you control how much CPU or RAM you want the browser to use. It also has a built-in network limiter that limits network bandwidth used by the browser, giving you a huge boost in performance in games or live streams. On top of all the performance benefits, there's also this really clean looking sidebar which lets you basically do anything you'd want with just a click of a button. This feature lets you chat and browse simultaneously with Twitter, Discord, whatever social media you use, all inside the Opera GX browser. But one of my favorite features is called the GX Player. The player lets you keep all your favorite music streaming services all in one place by letting you access Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube Music all on your sidebar. For those of you not on PC, don't worry, Opera GX has you covered with their mobile app. Opera GX is the perfect tool for gamers, so click the first link in the description and download their free web browser today. Number 26, Die Rise. Die Rise is not only the worst map in my opinion, but it also just has the worst Easter egg. There's very little to actually do in this Easter egg, and the fact that it can be beaten in 3 minutes and 9 seconds speaks volumes to just how little content there actually is in the Easter egg itself. On top of that, some of the steps feel very random and just kind of silly if you think about it. Like there's the one step where you randomly have to unload this liquefier into the statue and spawn, and then of course there's the multiple tile step on the elevator that is just always stressful if you don't happen to have the most competent group of 4 players going into this. And that's another thing, Easter eggs in general that require 4 players to complete are just naturally going to be lower on the list. Transit. The predecessor to Die Rise, the transit Easter egg called Tower of Babel was only slightly more engaging. Of course, all of the Victus maps had 2 separate Easter egg quests, but neither version of the transit one was particularly awe-inspiring. The Richthofen side is particularly hilarious just to look back on it. You basically have to build the jet gun just to break it, and on top of that, all 4 players are required to get EMP grenades, which takes just an incredible amount of RNG, only made worse by the fact that you have to travel from area to area to hit the mystery box. Ascension. Ascension was the first main quest style Easter egg that Treyarch ever tried to implement into the Zombies game mode. Let me just start by saying that this is clearly a very primitive, basic version of what the Call of Duty Zombies Easter egg would later become. I mean, it served its purpose for its time, but I don't know too many people who would actually want to go back and do it on a regular basis. Forsaken. If there was ever an Easter egg that feels rushed in development, it's this one. To me, it feels like Treyarch put all their time on this map to developing all the little side Easter eggs in boss fight, and put little care into the actual steps leading up to the boss. If it wasn't for the above average fight against the Forsaken himself, this Easter egg might have come in even lower on this list. Blood of the Dead. I'm somebody who loves doing complicated Easter eggs, but even I have to acknowledge that Blood of the Dead just takes it way too far. If you want to complete this egg, the average player needs to devote 2 to 3 hours of their life to this pain and suffering. I'm not sure why Treyarch wanted us to stare through our shields throughout the entire duration of this map, and the challenges are just way too easy to mess up. D-Machine. 80% of the D-Machine egg is spent upgrading the 4 different variants of the Die Wonder Weapon, which would be okay if the Wonder Weapon was actually worth using in the first place. The multiple unskippable Orloff cutscenes, to me, feel like they were made by a small indie company and not a AAA studio. The boss fight, using air quotes, was not really a boss fight whatsoever, and I'm pretty sure the average player could complete it with their eyes closed. Alpha Omega. The only noteworthy part of the Alpha Omega Easter egg is Rushmore, which is the little computer that basically tells you what to do next. The actual steps of the egg though are so just completely forgettable, and the only one that comes to mind when thinking about it is that Red Nova escort step, which I remember being just ridiculously annoying to do, especially on solo. The boss fight itself is okay, I guess, where we finally get to defeat the Avogadro from Transit, but all in all, this egg is just completely forgettable. Call of the Dead. To me, Call of the Dead was was a one step up from the Ascension Easter egg. It's a fetch style quest where our main goal is to retrieve the golden rod for Richtofen and the rest of the main crew, who is trapped behind a door. It's a very simple Easter egg, so simple in fact that it can be beat in only 5 minutes and 23 seconds, which just speaks to how little there actually is to do. The more step code is a great idea on paper, however, it's the same code every single game you play, so if you've done it once, then you've done it a million times. On a positive note, this was the first Easter egg you could ever do solo, and it was the first Easter egg to offer a permanent reward, whereas every time you load in Call of the Dead and kill George, you get a free Wonderwaff drop. Zetsubo no Shima. Zetsubo, without a doubt in my mind, has the worst Black Ops 3 Easter egg. It's relatively simple to explain. You get 3 cogs to repair the elevator to enter the boss fight. Unfortunately, the map gets held back by the plant system. On top of that, all players in the game must complete all challenges, which can always be tedious if the lobby you're playing in doesn't have the most competent of players. The Easter egg saving graces are the relatively simple yet horrifying spider boss fight, and the overall ties to the story at large. Firebase Z. I always thought the way that the Firebase Z Easter egg starts is kind of weird. You go to Peck, and then you go to Ravenov, and then you go to Peck, and then you go to Ravenov, and the first 10 minutes is just going back and forth between the two, like while they have conversations. On top of that, the Mimic step is still one of my least favorite Easter egg steps of all time, just because of the sheer amount of glitches associated with it. The rest of the steps are good, but it all leads up to what is easily the most overwhelmingly underwhelming boss fight in Zombies history, Moon. The only reason the Moon Easter egg doesn't come in towards the very bottom of this list is story. Most of the time you'll spend doing this egg is either A, spinning the mystery box in an attempt to get 3 different wonder weapons that you need, or B, waiting for the excavator to finally come down on tunnel 6. Of course though, you can't talk about the Moon Easter egg without bringing story into the equation. From witnessing Richtofen and Samantha literally switching bodies, to blowing up the earth itself, the story team on Treyarch really went all out on this map and held absolutely nothing back. Outbreak. The one saving grace for the Outbreak mode for me was the first Easter egg. That's the one I'm placing here. I like that the second half of the Easter egg takes place in a secret underground area that can only be accessed during the egg. It also ends with one of the most challenging boss fights we've had in Zombies, the Legion boss, Mob of the Dead. Although Mob is universally considered to be one of the best Zombies maps ever made, there's no denying that gameplay wise, its Easter egg is lacking a little bit of creativity. The egg requires the player to build and fly the plane not once, not twice, but 3 times, which gets extremely repetitive very quickly. But let's be honest with ourselves, nobody is doing the Mob Easter egg because they love the gameplay of it. Where the Mob Easter egg lacks in gameplay, it 100% makes up for in storytelling. Flying the plane over and over again makes sense, and it adds to the feeling of the 4 mobsters being trapped in the cycle. The egg honestly blows all other Easter eggs out of the water story-wise, and if I was someone who valued story over gameplay, I could see myself putting Mob at or near the top of this list. 9. I really like the 9 Easter egg on paper. You essentially do different challenges and puzzles in order to appease the 4 gods one at a time. Some memorable highlights are the Danu trial, where you get teleported to a hidden location, the mini boss fight against gladiators where you get unlimited specialists, and of course the final boss fight against 2 separate zombified elephants. Unfortunately, when thinking about the 9 egg, I tend to think about the more annoying steps first, such as waiting a seemingly endless amount of rounds to wait for the poop to marinate for whatever reason, before you can even begin the actual steps, and lining up the Serpent's Kiss shot to hit 3 symbols 3 different times. Sounds like it could be a lot of fun when you're saying it out loud, but it's actually really tedious when you're doing it. Tag der Toten. Something about doing the Tag der Toten Easter egg is so relaxing. Tag was a nice change of pace from the rest of Black Ops 4. There's very little memorization, and every step seems to flow seamlessly into the next, and of course it ends with the literal culmination of the Ether storyline. Voyage of Despair. Voyage gets too much hate. Not a single step of the Voyage Easter egg is annoying, and I have no idea why it gets lumped into the Blood of the Dead category for being too complicated. The Voyage Easter egg is extremely gameplay focused. There's several tight lockdown steps, a unique step where the player essentially has to get to the other side of the Titanic before freezing to death, and Voyage is home to one of my favorite boss fights in Zombies history. The steps that most of the community tend to hate on are the clock step and the planet step, neither of which is even the slightest bit annoying to anyone who's done them a couple of times. Revelations. So you You'd think that a map that was the finale of the Black Ops 3 story and featured 2 unique boss fights would be a little higher on the list. Unfortunately, the Rev egg didn't quite meet most people's expectations. Nonetheless, it was still a very solid egg and required the player to fight against several Panzer, Margwas, and various mini-bosses at multiple times. I never realized how much I needed to play basketball with the summoning key while throwing it to hit iconic items from previous maps until Revelations gave it to us. Dead of the Night. Say it with me. Underrated map. Underrated Easter egg. I've completed the Dead of the Night Easter egg more than any other Easter egg in the past few months. Am I crazy? I mean, maybe, but hear me out. 3 separate quests, each filled with unique puzzles and relatively difficult lockdowns. It ends with some of the most unique boss fight mechanics we've ever seen in Call of Duty Zombies. It also features a fun Wonder Weapon upgrade quest. Dead of the Night had it all and nobody appreciates it. Shadows of Evil. As much as I love Shadows of Evil, I have to acknowledge that its Easter egg has a lot of flaws. A majority of the egg is spent getting and upgrading the sword, and it ends with one of the most frustrating steps ever implemented, essentially locking the Easter egg from anyone who doesn't have 3 competent friends to do it with. At the end of the day though, I still love the Shadows egg for a multitude of reasons, and although getting and upgrading the sword is most of the egg, it's actually a lot of fun to do. The flag step is a fun difficult challenge that adds stress to the entire situation in the best way possible. Shangri-La. Easily the most fun Black Ops 1 Easter egg. The only major drawback of Shangri-La is that it requires 4 people. Shang was the first Easter egg in Zombies history that was actually a challenge. Shang features several fun puzzles and requires you to do something most Zombies players dread: use your mic to communicate. The whole going back in time thing in Eclipse mode adds a lot to the feel of the Shang egg and makes it a lot more fun. Mauer der Toten. The only Cold War Easter egg that's worth going back and doing is Mauer der Toten. Mauer is the one Cold War map to do the Easter egg the right way. It begins with a fun, simple mini quest to retrieve the Wonder Weapon. Some other major highlights are Klaus literally becoming a god amongst men when stopping the train, and the step where you smash 2 pieces of uranium together to initiate the boss fight was a lot of fun. And the Mauer der Toten Easter egg ends with what is easily the most fun and engaging boss fight in Cold War: Buried. This is the only Victus Easter egg to not make me feel physical pain when attempting it. It checks all the boxes for what makes a good Easter egg. It makes the player solve complex puzzles, complete a challenging escort step, and of course ended with one of the most iconic steps of all time, love it or hate it, the sharpshooter step. Buried also scored additional points because pretty much the entire Black Ops 2 story unfolds on this map, making it one of the most iconic yet underrated Easter eggs of all time. Garad Krovi. If you're someone who likes difficult gameplay and likes the rush of things constantly happening, then the Garad Krovi Easter egg is for you. It starts off a little slow, forcing the player to acquire 6 trophies, one of which requires the Gauntlet of Siegfried, which seems to take forever to actually get. But once you have all 6 trophies, the pacing just goes from 0 to 100 and provides the player with 6 unique difficult challenges. Over the years, the player base has learned to optimize these challenges, but if you're going in blind, these can actually be very difficult, but fun if you like a challenge. Of course, the Garad Krovi egg ends with one of, if not the best boss fight we've ever had, culminating in the death of Ultimus Nikolai. Der Eisendrock. I feel like Der Eisendrock is a lot of people's favorite Easter egg for some reason. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great, but it's definitely held back by a few things. The main one being the whisk step that you have to do not once, but twice for some reason. I will admit that doing the DE Easter egg is a lot of fun with friends. Whether it's shooting down Dempsey's pod in the sky, using the golden rod device at 4 different areas to charge the keeper using a different bow at each one, or of course, the first full boss fight we've ever had in Zombies, there's a lot of fun to be had. And I couldn't move on past Der Eisendrock without mentioning the ending. The DE ending mirrors the events of Moon, where this time we blow up the moon, leading into the final cutscene where we all know what happens. Ancient Evil. The Ancient Evil Easter egg is absolutely fantastic. Acquiring and upgrading the 4 gauntlets are some of my favorite Easter egg steps ever. Each one is completely unique and tied to the specific god or goddess that the gauntlet is associated with. Once the 4 gauntlets are upgraded once each, every step is a lot of fun and extremely memorable. If you've never tried doing the Ancient Evil Easter egg, which I feel like most of you probably haven't, I really do recommend giving it a shot. Origins. Origins has to have the #1 spot. Without Origins, we never would have had the golden era of Easter eggs during Black Ops 3 forward. This map changed the way we look at zombies, directing the player to one specific central focus, which in this case was rescuing Samantha from Agartha. Pretty much every map from Origins to the end of Black Ops 4 used this model of giving a player a central focus. This map made it commonplace for the average player to learn different strategies for acquiring the wonder weapon as quickly as possible.